Afternoon, RPCs. Welcome to this special edition call. We'll call it the first of many because I think this is probably a topic that is going to continue. But as so many great topics around here do, these start out of a moment of necessity or need and transition into something that sticks around for quite some time. So excited to be here with you on this lovely day. Now, as advertised for this call, I am recording this call to share the recording inside of the RPC only section on Mighty Network. So you will be able to find the recording there. I know, for example, Scott's got to bounce out a little early. He's already at Panera for the consultation coming up a little while. And so glad you're making some good use of your pre-consultation time. And if they're a little late, stick with us a little longer, but you'll be able to catch the back half on recording that way. Again, not all the call types that we do around here get recorded. There's some, especially, for example, the mental health call that would suffer from being recorded. And so we do some things differently, but this is one of those, this is content that I think is going to be really beneficial and valuable for all of us, wherever we happen to be in our processes. And so excited to get to jump in and have these conversations. We'll have probably people continuing to jump in here as we get started. We have almost 60 registered for live today, so that is a bunch of people. So with that, quick thing as always, we do have that chat box open here for those thoughts and questions along the way. Now, if a bunch of people are asking me questions and I don't get to all the questions, I will apologize ahead of time. Again, almost 60 people live. There's a good chance I'm not going to get to every single question today along the way, and so that's a thing that can happen. Also, happy to take some questions live along the way as we've got some things popping up there. So with that, we will use the hand raise buttons today. As much as I love even like the hand raise on webcam with this many people, Zoom will not show me all of you at the same time if everyone's got their webcam on. So I don't want you sitting here like a fool for a long time or giving yourself a thrown out shoulder or something. So if you have something you're wanting to talk about, not in the chat box, make sure you're making use of the hand raise button. If it's been a little while since you've used the hand raise button on Zoom, on your toolbar, click reactions, and there you'll see raise hand. And you can also use that to lower your hand. But let's dive in on some really important stuff today. And we'll start with, I'm sure, one of the things that a lot of you came for, because I wrote up a nice long thing on Tuesday morning. I was, I'll be honest, calling this out, a little fired up after Monday's RPC update and some of the questions popping up. I was like, let's have a real conversation about this, and let's work some stuff through and have some fun with this. So one of the things that I want to do is I wanted to take a moment to kind of share with you part of the process that I use to really understand and improve my conversion rate. So what I am sharing at this point is not solely theory. This is not something that I just crafted hypothetically for this. This is literally what I used in building my own practice. So however you choose to work some of these things out practically is kind of up to you. But one of the things that I think is really, really important for us as coaches, and this is going to sound really, really weird as I say this out loud, but track with me for a second. Coaches, most coaches don't know their numbers. Let me say that again. Most coaches don't know their numbers. Now, we probably know some of our numbers. I'm not saying we don't understand math. Probably not a financial coach with zero understanding in math. I know that some of you are also financial advisors and doing other things and really looking at numbers, and numbers are your thing. We've got CPAs that participate in RPC. So I'm not saying we don't know math. I'm saying most of us don't know our numbers. For example, right now, what percentage of you know your exact lead to paying client rate? A couple people. How many of you know along the way, what percentage of your leads have a first conversation with you? What percentage of your leads have a consultation with you? What percentage of your leads require what number of times before they'll have a consultation with you? What's your average length of time from lead to converted client? See, one of the things that a lot of times we don't do is we don't dive deep enough into our numbers. And for those of you that have known me for a while and been around for a while, you may know that I am not a number loving guy. Many of you have heard me say the challenge over and over. I challenge you to do multiple coaching sessions in a row with the same client with no numbers involved. The numbers thing is not something that I have a deep love and passion for. So again, please, as we're walking through this, understand like this is not my natural go-to. This was something I had to force myself to get good at to go where I wanted to go in my coaching. And so one of the things that I did from a fairly early stage, and again, you can do this as high tech or as low tech as you want. At the time, CRMs weren't quite as plentiful, certainly weren't quite as affordable as they are today. And again, if you know me, you know I'm not a huge fan of spreadsheets. And I have lots of friends that love a good spreadsheet. I'm not one of those people. Spreadsheets and me, we don't get along so well. And so I actually took the good old fashioned yellow legal pad and created my own chart along the way. And what I would start to do with this chart is I wanted to track all of my numbers. And so the first thing I would do, my first column every single time, lead name. I want to know, like, what's this person's name? And if it's a couple, I put both their names. And I forgot to bring it with me today. I thought about it. I thought about going into the locked file cabinet in the home office and pulling out all this documentation and dragging it with me to work. And then this morning I had other stuff going on and didn't get to it. But I still have these things in my home office with the list of every single lead I had over a period of years. And I can go back and look and see who that lead was. So that was the first column. The next column was, where did that lead come from? Because I wanted to know what were my actually productive lead sources. I wanted to know both what things were generating the greatest number of leads, but also wanted to see where those leads went along my process. And so having a knowledge of who the lead is, where did they come from? And so this could be everything from RPC leads. I was part of a BNI group. If this was a referral through church, if this was a referral through FPU, if this was a referral through my counseling practice, I would write down exactly who this lead came from because it allowed me to track my best leads. And also, for those of you that are wanting to incentivize your network and referral sources for sending you leads, makes it a whole lot easier to track those things, and you know how beneficial is this person in sending you leads and how quality are the leads they're sending you. You may choose to send some of your network partners a Christmas card. Sometimes it's a Christmas card that's happy. Sometimes it's like, hey, it's Christmas, thanks. But you get to decide these things, but actually knowing your numbers on these along the way is really helpful. After knowing who they were and where they came from, I had a series of columns based on where they were in my process. First call, second call, third call, emails, and I would actually keep record of when did I call, what was the result of the call, how long did the call go, and when was I supposed to call them again? Because one of the things that I have found over the time, especially for me, and this is for a lot of us too, but especially for me, it's very, very easy to get those first 2, 3, 4 contacts out to a lead, but then quite often we let that go cold really, really fast. And I know some of you that I've had some of these conversations with have seen sometimes a fairly long length of time between somebody reaching out for help and somebody actually signing up for the help that they need. Many of you know Lisa here in our team. Lisa previously held the record at 10 years until our good friend Justin Bennett stole that record at 12 years. 12 years from reaching out to a lead as a lead to first paid session. 12 years. A lot can happen in 12 years. That's an incredible amount of time. But you think about what these look like, and it allows us to track, again, where are the leads coming from and where am I in my conversation points with them? Because one of the things that I always want to do is I want to keep following up with leads until a lead says, do not talk to me again. I'm going to continue to reach out. And some of this is going to be a review or a refresher of some of those things that you've heard us say this before. It takes probably on average 10 to 12 times of talking to somebody before they're ready to say yes. And so a lot of times my process, I'd get a new lead in, great. First thing, and again, this is a little bit of a style point. You can adjust this as you would like. The first thing I would do, send them a text. Why a text? Text is the least effective of the three forms of communication between email, phone call, and text. Why in the world would I send them a text first? Y'all, how many of you answer the phone to numbers you don't recognize? I don't. Why in the world would I want to answer a phone of a number I don't recognize? So my first step, once I got the lead, text them. Hey, so glad to meet you. My name is Tim. I'm a coach. Got your information from fill in the blank here. So excited to contact you. Your phone's about to ring with my number. Please feel free to answer it. And one of the things I learned is when I actually texted and then called immediately, my pickup rate of phone calls went way up because people were far more likely to answer the phone because like, oh, this is what this number is that's calling me. And then once I'm on the phone, great. Let's have the conversation about why you just called in. Now, by the way, this is an area, and I will call this out, this is an area that we within the training are looking at because we haven't done enough to push on this. Because a lot of times we spend a lot of time thinking about the focus of the question of, would you like some help with that? Are you ready to get started? And these are questions that we usually ask at the end of a consultation. And you've probably heard us say, you've got to make sure you're asking for the business. If you get to the end of a consultation, you don't ask for their business, you've missed one of the most important steps. And anyone who has ever done a sales training at any level will tell you, you've got to ask for the business. That's the reality. But we forget, we also have to ask for the consultation. And so one of the things when I would jump on the phone call, asking somebody for that consultation time, I would love to offer, and I would even call it, I would love to offer you a consultation to see if coaching is a good fit. Let's take a look at what are the best times for you. Now you can be more directive with this. You could do the whole, I've got Tuesday at 3 or Thursday at 4, which one of those works better? You could also, if you've got them on the phone, ask a couple of broader questions to narrow it down. I would love to get together with you for a consultation. What days of the week are best for you? What time? And let's start to narrow this down. You can ask this in the form of a couple questions, but let's get to a spot of actually booking a consultation by the end of that first initial contact, if at all possible. And if you can't book a consultation, book another contact. So again, I would do the text first to see if I could get them to answer the phone. Then I would call them, and some people still won't answer because some people fill this out in places where they can't. I joked about Scott being at Panera earlier. Sometimes, y'all, you're going to have people that are sitting in a crowded or loud area that are submitting because this is where they have the time to be on their computer, but it's not a good time to take a phone call. If I'm sitting in the waiting area at the terminal at the airport, thinking about my financial position, because I just got a rough conversation with my boss before leading out on this business trip, and I'm sitting here typing away, the last thing I want to do is pick up a phone call and start talking about my stress sitting in a crowded terminal waiting of other people for the plane. And so even then, we sometimes get this idea of they're at their computer, they're on their phone, why in the world wouldn't they answer my call immediately? They literally were just here. We don't know what's going on in their life on the other side. We don't know that whole situation. And so I want to take the time to text, call, and if I get the voicemail, leave a voicemail. Let them hear your voice. Let them know what you sound like. Because I will tell you, I've had plenty of calls that I don't answer because I don't recognize the number. And I'm like, if it's important, they will call back. And if they don't leave a voicemail, I'm not going to call back. I'm not going to call you just because you left your number on my phone with no voicemail attached. Pass. That's how you get scammed. But instead, I'm going to call back. And then after the voicemail, I'm going to send an email. I'm going to send an email. And my email was always fairly basic. Now, there's nothing wrong with doing a semi-templated email. I will be honest, I did not have the time to write out a brand new full-length email every single time a lead came in. Ain't nobody got time for all that. But I also don't want to send just the exact same template to everybody because it doesn't feel personal and it doesn't feel like, oh, there's someone on the actual other end of the line that's connecting with me. And so I walked through this template and it was fairly simple. My name and who I am. And so I'd actually put their name in the top. Hey, so-and-so, great to meet you. My name's Tim. I'm a financial coach. Got your information from wherever I got their information from. Based on what I know you were wanting to have conversations on this topic, this topic, this topic. Would love to get some time on the calendar. When's the best time to call you to set up a time to talk? Boom, done. And so part of this, like my intro line there, was mostly already preset. I just had to go in and fill in name, where they came from. Hey, so excited to talk to you about. Fill in what are some of the things that you may know about their situation. And it may not be much, but if they, for example, have submitted a lead form where they've said, here's something I want to talk about, or if this is somebody that you have any kind of information on because of who gave you the lead, put that in there and it personalizes it. And the person reading that email says, oh, this is a real person. This is a real email. This is not an automated email. This is somebody that actually wants to have a conversation with me. Let's build a bridge. And for me, those three are 3 points of contact. We talked about this needing to be 10 to 12 points. That means I'm going to do it again. If they don't respond to my email, if they don't respond to my call, if they don't respond to my text, I'm going to leave the text aside. And from here on out, it's phone calls and emails. They've already had the text. They already know that this number is me. I don't need to keep texting somebody, and most people aren't going to continue to respond. In fact, I got a text today asking me if I'm willing to sell a property at a particular address. I don't own this property. I've never heard of this street name. I have no idea if I somehow own a property, that somebody scam owns a property in my name. No idea. So I'm just going to ignore that. Right? And so I don't want to get blown up with text either. Our prospects, our leads don't want to get blown up with text. So once I've used that introductory text to give them my phone number that I'm going to be calling from, texting for me is off the table. Unless they specifically ask for it after we've had a conversation. At this point, it's phone calls and emails. How often? For me, I love to have that first one within 24 hours. And again, if we have already talked and now we've put something on the calendar, this next part is different. These are for the people that you don't get to talk to in that first 24 hours. Awesome. I'm going to do it again at 48 and again at 72. Roughly speaking, right? I'm not actually running a calendar. And if it was 2 o'clock this day and 3 o'clock this day, oh no, it's 26 hours. Oh, it's not what I'm saying. But each day for the first 3 days, I'm going to reach out. And then after the first 3 days, I'm going to do that again in a week. And I'm going to do it again at 2 weeks. And I'm going to do it again at a month. And then after that first month, I'm going to do it again each month for the first 6 months. And after 6 months, I'm still going to, every 3 months, once a quarter, reach back out and reach back out and reach back out. And so one of the things that, going back to that chart that I was talking about a few minutes ago, because I know we've kind of got away from the chart here, but we're going to come back to that in a second. One of the things that keeping that chart allowed me to do was I could go back, because I would also date when that lead came in, and I could do a grouping and say, all right, it is now December. I need to go back. What were all the people that put in a lead with me in some form or fashion back in September that I haven't heard from yet? Pick those people's names, jot them all down, make my next round of calls. Make my next round of emails, and keep going and going. And by the way, some of the longest term clients I ever had were clients that did not convert immediately. In fact, one of the things that I got to see, this ended up not being a great thing long term because she ran off the rails. This was more of a her thing. COVID was not good to this particular client. But I had a client that from our first lead to our first session was almost 15 months. So from lead to session, almost 15 months. But then once she started, it was twice a month for 6 months, once a month for 6 months after that, and every other month for the next 2 years. And she kind of ran off the rails. She, like many other people, kind of lost her mind a little bit during the whole COVID thing, and was spending way too much money, and stopped coming to me because I would tell her she had to stop spending money because she was going to run out very quickly. And she didn't like that, so she stopped showing up for coaching. Only so much we can do. But that was one of those things where the reason that she decided to work with me at all was because she would keep seeing those emails or those phone calls coming in. And it stuck with her. And that reminded her, oh, when I'm finally ready for this, this person hasn't stopped asking me to help me, but they're also not like pounding on my door in desperation, but they haven't given up. And so that's part of it. It's finding this persistency along the way. Now, again, part of this means that you're creating prospects, that you're creating a lead source. I talked about it in the description for this call, but the purpose of this call is not to do prospecting or networking, and there's lots of great conversations to be had about that. But this is, as you're getting these leads, how do we actually continue to move them through? And so again, I would have my columns: name, where did it come from, and I would also start to look at how often I was contacting them and was able to kind of track these things through. The other thing that doing this allowed me to do was it allowed me to figure out where the holes in my process were. And so one of the things that I found is that as I went through the entirety of it, I found that from all lead sources across all areas, my conversion rate overall was about 20%. So out of every lead that I ever got, 2 out of 10 of them were going to get all the way over across the sheet into paid client territory. And with that, I was able to say, all right, so I know that there's a good chance that 8 out of these 10 people that I'm going to talk to aren't going to get there. And I'm okay with that, because on some level, this is a numbers game. And the more I can do this, the better I will get at it. But what I also was able to do is I could start to track at which point along the way were people dropping off. So what I did learn is, out of that lead category, yes, 20% would end up becoming a paid client. Only 50% of my leads did I ever get to have a conversation with. So 50% of the leads I had, to this day, I've never spoken to. They were on the list. I got their name or information from somewhere, but 50% of them I never spoke to. Some of them I spoke to, and it just didn't go so well. In fact, one of the funniest moments, and a couple of you may have heard this one before, but if you have, it's still funny, and a great reminder just in general for cell phone etiquette in the year of our Lord 2022. If somebody calls you and you're on some version of speakerphone, it's really, really kind when you answer the phone to say, hello, I've got you on speakerphone with whoever else happens to be around you at the time. Unlike this particular case, this was one of my BNI leads, where I get a lead from, of all people, the landscaper in my BNI group, who says, hey, you need to reach out to so-and-so. She and her husband are having some financial difficulties. I think she could really use your help, and she's going to expect your call. I operated under that assumption, by the way, that she was expecting my call. So when I called her and she said hello, I said, hey, this is Tim. I'm a financial coach. Got your name from so-and-so and would love to get connected with you. And she said, who is this? I said, well, this is Tim. I'm a coach. I'm in a group with such and such, the landscaper. And he said that you could probably use the help of a coach. She's like, I still don't get it. So I work with people to get together on the same page with their spouse, to get out of debt, to really improve their financial futures along the way, especially people that aren't really where they want to be going financially. So but this point, I'm like 3 or 4 attempts in and getting more and more clear each time, at which point she drops the massive bomb on the conversation of, I'm driving the middle school carpool today. You're on speakerphone with a bunch of middle schoolers. Needless to say, that's the last time I ever heard from this lead. She decided that we were not going to have any more conversations, which, looking back, was probably for the best, because for all I know, we were going to have coaching sessions while she was driving the carpool, and the kids were going to be all up in her business even more than they already were in that one. And so knowing that there is a numbers game and a lot of these leads are not going to get there. But I also knew that if I could get them to have a conversation, about 50% of the people that had a conversation with me would actually then become somebody who I could have a consultation with. And so there was a lot of people who I offered the consultation that said no for one reason or another. And by the way, this group of people, the people that don't allow me a consultation now, but that I have the opportunity to talk to, I either get a phone response or even an email response, these are the ones who are most likely, I've found, to convert later. These are the ones I especially wanted to keep in this funnel. These are the ones I especially wanted to keep reaching out to. These are the ones I wanted to make sure were on my regular email list. And sometimes I would even ask them, hey, can I add you to my email list? I sometimes like to send out tips, tricks, videos, encouragements. And by the way, when I would send those emails out, I would never ask somebody, and by the way, I'm not saying you have to do it this way. I know lots of coaches that do put ask in these. For me, I wouldn't ask anybody to do anything to respond. It was purely just, let me give some more information and motivation and encouragement. I think it was Donald Miller that first talked about this. He said, you can't give enough away that there's no value left. Right? Yes, we've all heard the old adage of, if you do something well, don't give it away for free. And it's also true that, especially when we're thinking about what we do in coaching. By the way, I know a couple of you got to take off as we're getting close to the halfway mark here, but thanks for jumping in, catch the recording. But these were the kind of opportunities that I really wanted to continue with, and just continue to pour into them and show them the value and show them the value and show them the value, because this wasn't somebody who'd given me a no. They just weren't ready to have the conversation yet. Now, for me, the really fun part was when I hit the consultation. My consultation conversion rate was fantastic. My consultation conversion rate was 90%. 90% of the people I got to go as far as a consultation actually became a paying client. And now there's a lot of different reasons that this could be the case. And there's some different reasons that our numbers will each vary based on what's going on and who the leads pool is and all those different things. But what this told me was exactly where the holes in my system were. I knew my consultations were right where I wanted them to be. Because, by the way, you're never going to hit 100%. If you've had at least 2 leads, you're probably not going to hit 100%. Like, maybe your first lead converts great and you're 100% until you get the next lead, and it's the one that never calls you back, or the one that allows you to call them while they're driving the middle school carpool, and it's super awkward. Right? But most of the time, we're not going to hit 100%, but 90% was pretty great. And if 90% is great, that means I'm going to keep doing the consultations this way. So what are the holes that I need to plug? And where I saw some of my biggest holes is I need to figure out how in the world I was going to increase my opportunities to talk to somebody. Because my get that first conversation, that number wasn't where I wanted it to be. And from that first conversation to a consultation, that number wasn't where I wanted it to be. And so those were the things that I got to keep pushing on. Those were the things that I got to keep hitting. Those were the things that I wanted to really put my energy and effort into, because that was the important spots. Those were where I was failing in doing what I wanted to do and creating as many clients as I wanted to create. And so putting this kind of a system together allows you the opportunity to really change your conversion process. So again, I would put name, contact information, where the lead was from, and I would have them and where they fell within my process along the way. Text, call, email, how many, what were the results of those things, if they made it into consultation. And I always was able to go through and find my percentages and find my percentage, which, by the way, really easy. You take the number that you've got, divided by the number total, percentage, ta-da, there. If you didn't know that particular math formula, super easy. 4-function calculator, all you need. And it doesn't have to be this elaborate thing. Although if anyone here loves spreadsheets and wants to do all kinds of auto formulas in their spreadsheets and automate the part of this thing, please do, go for it, have fun. If you create something like that and you want to share that with other coaches, I'm cool with that. I'm all about those kind of things. We've done some versions of that here. We'll probably continue to work on building some of that stuff out. It's so important for us to really begin to know these numbers. So the other thing that I've really seen, in addition to knowing our numbers, is I'm a huge, huge fan of really thinking about our perspective on leads and thinking about, what does a lead mean? When we think about what is it that somebody is reaching out to us for, what is it that they want? Because sometimes we miss great opportunities because we can get really, really focused in, and we love focus. We know that we will win at and finish what we focus on, but the focus needs to come a little bit further into the process. And so one of the things that I always want to take a look at is, when I'm getting a lead, what are the full range of opportunities here? What is it that this person is ultimately really trying to get after? And so, for example, one of the things that I see every so often is, and I've had this on more than one occasion, somebody who comes to me for business coaching. And some of you have heard me mention this couple over the years. The couple I had at one point, the most convoluted business accounting system I have ever seen, ever. Now, I'm not a CPA, not a bookkeeper, not an accountant type, so I'm sure that those of you that have that background will have stories that will put this one to shame, and that's awesome. Love to hear those someday. Well, this couple owned 3 side-by-side properties, and on these properties, one of them was the one they lived in. The other 2 properties had structures on them that they were renting out to a total of 4 different businesses that they owned, all 4 of them. So you have 4 businesses and 3 properties, all being run as these different profitable kind of things. Because even the home that they lived in was a duplex where they were renting out part of it. They had 7 different P&L, profit and loss statements, being run out of one single checking account. That's a mess. Your tax guy is going to hate you because they didn't know what in the world was profitable, what was not. They didn't know what was actually producing income, what was losing money. They had no idea on any of this scenario. And this was a failure for me because one of those things that I did is I got so caught up in their scenario that I missed some of the larger opportunity for coaching in a situation like this. This couple owns 4 businesses, employing a group of different people and dealing with the normal challenges of trying to figure out how in the world do I keep people, especially if you're looking at the same modern work economy we've got now. Many of you have looked at this recently. If you haven't heard the stat, it usually costs about an annual salary of a position to hire and replace somebody in that position. So even somebody making 15 bucks an hour, 40 hours a week, $30,000 a year, every time that position rolls over for that company, it's costing them 30 grand. And so if you have a coaching lead, coaching prospect, who is a small business owner, maybe they're a franchisee of your local Mickey D's, it costs them $30,000 for every time one of those employees rolls over and they've got to replace them. That's an incredible amount of money. And what I missed in that opportunity was I have the opportunity, yes, to coach this couple, but I may also be able to approach this couple and start to talk to them about how they can provide for their business by utilizing coaching as a way to provide an additional benefit to their customer or to their team members and hold on to their team members for a little while longer. And so again, one of the things that is really helpful to improve our conversion rate is to even begin to think differently about how the person on the other side of this may be able to benefit from your help as a coach. Because when you start to think about these wider opportunities, it changes that first phone call. It changes that email. It changes the follow-up emails. If I can start to get some of this information, I can even start to tailor follow-up emails to different leads or prospecting groups. If I have a group of single parents that I'm wanting to work with and they're saying, I don't know if I can do this right now, it's a crazy time of the year, I would love to talk with you once the kids are back in school because we're into December and the kids are about to be out of school, and this is not a good time. Great. Can I call you in January? Sure thing. Put them in a group and then maybe send some emails out throughout Christmas time encouraging them for what they're doing well, encouraging them to continue the course, encouraging them to not fall into all the traps at Christmas time. You may see the same thing roll around in the summertime. Oh, the kids are about to be home from school. This is not a good time for us to take time to meet. Great. Can I call you in August? But we can start to think through these things and actually start to, we don't want to put people in boxes, but actually categorizing your leads and knowing, what do I have? Where are they? How do I best connect with this group of people? And start to tailor your messaging to your different leads and prospect along the way. Now, I love what Christopher had said in the chat box, also including some of the things of how long it takes. Because the other thing to know is, what is your average time from getting a lead to them becoming a paying client? Also, from them becoming a paying client to, what's the average time from getting a lead to first contact? What's the average time from getting a lead to consultation? What's the time from getting a lead to that conversion rate where they're a paying client? Because just like figuring out who makes it, figuring out how long it takes them can also give you some really useful information about how your clients are becoming your clients and how long it takes you to hit some of your conversion rates. So again, I have know that I've thrown a ton at you. I want to find out what are some of the questions that y'all have about what I've thrown. Maybe there's things that are unclear. Maybe there's things that I haven't gone deep enough in yet. Maybe you have follow-up questions to what I've laid out so far. Coaches, what are some of those questions? Let's start off with Angie here. Angie, it's going to ask you to unmute on your end and then go ahead.
All right. First, Tim, I'm just going to say this is fantastic. I really wish all this was in FCMT.
We're working on that.
Thank you. Much appreciated. And yeah, I was just looking through the data and tracking by the lead sources. I know for my business that has been huge because I'm starting to see one lead source perform really, really well for me. And the rest of them aren't as much, but that's also let me know that I need to try to find ways to diversify my lead sources that are like my one doing really well.
And real quick on that, there's two things that can mean, by the way, Angie. It means A, you've got one lead resource that's doing really, really well. And so we need to try to replicate that. It can also be an indicator, an opportunity for us to take a look at the lead sources that are not and figure out, is there something I can tweak on this lead source so that it gets better? And so, for example, one of the things, if I have a lead source that is all local, right? So I mentioned, for example, earlier, I was in a BNI group, Business Networking International. If I know that the local people want a different style of contact than people who I may find from throughout the country from a more online resource, I may completely change my approach to impact my numbers. And so testing constantly, is this lead source for me not producing well because it's just not a good source? Or is it not producing well because I need to adjust my approach to this particular lead source to bring this up? And so what I might do in a situation like that is start testing how I'm approaching those people and seeing if I can get movement. And if I try that for a while and I still can't create movement, well, then it's not my best source. And now I know I got to get time away from this one and reinvest this time into the sources that are better producing or have the opportunity to be. Does that make sense, Angie? Awesome. Follow-up question, or did we get it? Okay, just double checking. Awesome. Let's go over here to Nathan. Nathan, go ahead. Let's try that again. All right, it says you're unmuted, but I still can't hear you. Double check. You should have a little arrow next to your mute button. May have you on a different headset or microphone. Still nothing. All right. Nathan, you can also feel free to toss your question in the chat box, and I'm looking at the chat box as well for any questions that I may have missed. Again, welcome to live technology, y'all. Chris?
Hey, Tim, thanks a lot for this conversation. It is very impactful, not only for the coaching side, but also my day job. So you've got all these people, and you had mentioned, like, from the time you get the lead, 24 hours, 48, 72. I know that's kind of a generalization, but how do you track these when these folks are now at the 1 week, 2 week, month? Do you do that through the CRM, like a HubSpot, or do you do that through something like MailChimp, through mass mailings? I mean, because if you've got more than 4 or 5 people, it becomes pretty tedious. What's your method for doing that?
So if you're better at technology than I am, which is a very, very, very low bar, there's nothing wrong with using something like MailChimp, like HubSpot, or another CRM that would be similar to that, and keep those things in a pool. I was very, very, very low tech in how I did this. Because for me, I'm not a technology loving guy. I think technology has done a lot of good, but it's just not how my mind tends to work. And so for me, what I would tend to do is tend to group things. And so once I got past that first month, it was very much a thing of me really drawing a bracket on the side of my page and bracketing in all the leads that came in during that month. And so I knew to go back, and so I could look at this as right. So I'm in December. I need to look at my September list, and I would go back through my bracket of September. It's all right. Who in September has not either given me a very clear yes or a very clear no? And as long as, if they've given me a clear yes, great. Like, I'm already working with them, or they've graduated out or whatever. If they gave me a very clear no, pound sand, I'm never going to talk to you again, cool. I would probably, even in a situation like that, grab a pencil and just put one line through it so I could still see it, and know that it was there, but that was a reminder to me, oh, this person is not someone I should call back. They're on a red card in the Rolodex kind of thing. If anyone remembers Rolodexes from back in the day, I'm an old soul apparently. But that was how I'd kind of keep those things really in. Once we get past those first couple of weeks, yes, those first couple of days or first couple of weeks can be a little difficult. And so this is one of those things that the good benefit versus the difficult benefit. If you are full time, you have more time to work on this, and you probably have more leads coming in. If you're part time, probably have fewer leads coming in, but you also have less time to work on this. But this was one of those things that I constantly worked on because I knew this was how I was going to get where I wanted to go. And so again, if you find a technological way that works best for you, that set these reminders, or if there's a particular program that you like, go for it. But again, if you're like me and you're like, I don't know about all this technology stuff, you can actually do this. It was the other thing that was I'm a big fan of, and some of you have seen me talk about these particular tools before. Always a big fan of multicolored pens on stuff, because it allowed me to color code very, very simply how things were going. And so even, for example, after a phone call, I might use red after a phone call to denote this is a stop. All right, I had the phone call. This is not somebody who's going to be willing to pursue. They've told me to stop calling them. Maybe black is a solid yes. There we go, right? Maybe blue is keep calling. Or if you want to get a green pen, if that's your thing, and green means go ahead and keep calling. Because you can use sometimes these color-coded systems to help yourself out and figure out where you are with these different people along the way. And by the way, just as a thought with this, I was averaging usually about 10 leads a month. And with that, with the conversion rate I had, having done this both in Ohio, then shutting down Ohio, moving to Tennessee and doing it again, I managed to go from 0 to full time in less than a year each time, because these were the things that I kept focusing on. And so when I'm adding 2 to 3 clients a month, that 10-ish leads per month, adding 2 to 3 clients a month that I'm going to continue to see twice a month for the next 6 months, it doesn't take a whole lot to fill the calendar fairly quickly. Let's go over here to Nathan. Nathan, go ahead.
All right, can you hear me now?
Now we got you.
All right. All right. So just a point of clarification. With this new RPC program, the zip codes are going away, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Are we going to know which zip, or at least which time zone that our clients are going to be coming in from?
That is getting built in, and if it is not fully turned on yet, it will be soon. Now,
So my
obviously,
question is-
they have to turn it on, or they have to fill it in
Right.
and do so accurately. The number of people that I've had missed calls with me over the years because they picked the wrong time zone and then book a call and then log in to call 3 hours before or after it's
Right.
supposed to happen. Well, I can't help with that, right?
Right.
But go ahead. You had a follow up to that.
Yeah. So my question is related to calling them back. I mean, what sort of, I guess, hours do work best as far as calling people back? Is it during business hours whenever they're potentially at work? Is it after work at risk of impeding on their personal family time? Or and because at times I'll get leads coming in even in my own zip code in the middle of the night. I mean, I want to call somebody at like 2 a.m. So I guess what is the best conversion rate to actually, I guess, we reach out and actually call somebody.
Yeah. So this is why I like the idea of the text before call. Sometimes what I would even add into this, especially if it was at an odd hour, I would say, my name is Tim, I'm a coach, would love to call you, especially if this is outside of my normal calling hours, because you get to determine your boundaries. Some of you will say, I will never, ever, ever call a prospect back outside of my set working hours, and there's nothing wrong with that. Some of you may say, I won't do consultations, I won't do other things, but I will take 5 or 10 minutes here and there to call a new lead immediately because I want that immediacy. And so a lot of times what I might even add at the end of that text is now an okay time to call. And the reason for that is if they're filling this out in the middle of the night, there's usually one of a couple reasons. By the way, if it was in the middle of the night and I'm sleeping, they can wait till I wake up, because I set my phone to a silent alarm at night kind of thing. So it will give me my wake up alarm and no other sounds. The only person who would need me for an emergency in the middle of the night lives in my house with me, and she can help waking me up if that needs to happen, right? She's not going to be texting me at 2 o'clock in the morning on something like that. So I would wait till the next morning. But if I happen to be awake, or if I happen to be outside of my normal business hours, but decided to call somebody back, I could text them and ask, is this an appropriate time? Or is there a better time to call back, and wait a couple minutes to see the response and then go from there? And the reason for that is I had a number of, for example, clients who were first responders. And so when you have emergency responders, a lot of them work very odd hours. And some of them want that call back because they're there at work anyway, even in the middle of the night. As much as we love the idea of a lot of our clients working a 9-to-5 schedule, many of our clients won't have a 9-to-5 schedule. And yeah, you're probably not going to get a ton of people who are working second shift retail, just because honestly, that's not the largest group of people that is willing to and seeking after coaching. But it's possible. But I had a ton of emergency responders. I had 911 dispatchers. I've had police officers, firefighters, EMTs, paramedics that reached out that sometimes had some unconventional hours. And so they were fine with a call at 2 o'clock in the morning if that's when I happened to be awake and wanted to call them. But that text helps solve a lot of those problems. Awesome. What other questions do we have? By the way, speaking of texts, huge fan of getting a secondary number to your main phone. Personally, I use Google Voice, and it allows me to very, very easily and quickly know, is this a work-related call or text, or is this a personal-related call or text? The other nice thing is with Google Voice, you can have a setting where it'll ring. It'll show up as Google Voice on your caller ID. When you answer it, it will ask the person on the other end to state their name, and they will state their name, and then you get to decide to accept the call or not. So it's almost like having a secretary that you don't pay for, which is wonderful because it's technology. And so this way it would allow me, because by the way, I will just tell you, once somebody sees your phone number attached to a business something or other, you are going to get a whole bunch of calls from people who want to sell you something for your business. And some of them are things you may actually, in fact, want to buy. Many of them are going to be things that you don't want to buy, or things that you don't need, or things that aren't actually what's necessary for your coaching business. And so one of the things I would do to help reduce the amount of times I was getting incoming calls from marketers who were trying to market to me as a business owner is I would be able to use this. And so when they would have to state their name, if it wasn't the name of a lead or a client or somewhere along the way that I recognize the name, I let it go to voicemail. And most of the time when I did that, it was a marketer. Again, I'm not mad at marketers. They are doing the work that they have to do to feed their families. All good. I just don't have to answer the phone for that. And that's a decision that I get to make. And I'm a fan of it. Chris also asked about automation through HubSpot of MailChimp. Again, you can take a look at those and see what works best for you. I know there's some great resources out there. I've heard nothing but good about either of those, but I have not personally used them. I do know my wife is using MailChimp for her business, and so far has had a lot of success with that. She has a small business with handmade jewelry and has loved getting to do that, to have a mailing list in addition to her Instagram and such. So, yeah, great questions. What other questions? Well, if not, I have another question for all of you. As we've walked through, because again, I have thrown a ton of stuff at you information-wise. Again, like I said in the description, more than what I'm used to on these calls. As you've been on calls to know that I don't usually talk quite this much. But I would love to find out from some of you, what's been the most helpful to you, or the most challenging to you from today's call? Or what are you going to do as a result of this new information? What are you going to implement or build into your practice as a result of this time that you've spent here? Awesome. Let's go over here to Carl.
Yeah, this has been fantastic today. And the one thing I'm going to change, when I got a lead, I tended to try to call immediately. So I'm going to do the text, call, email thing. And for Chris, I really do well with HubSpot. One of the things I like about HubSpot is that when I send an email, the system keeps track of if the person actually opened the email or not. So that is a real handy tool that I know if John Jones got my email, but he has never opened it.
Mhm.
So that's a
That
good
is
tool.
super handy. One of the things that you can also track along the way with this, by the way, for those of you that are looking towards the email path, MailChimp is really, really great. And you're looking for two things when you have emails. You're looking for open rate. So how often is somebody opening your email? The other thing that can be a really, really useful stat to have is what's called the click-through rate. And so if you have something in the email that you're asking them to do, so for example, if you're going to put together a monthly coaching blog with encouragements and insights and something written, rather than throwing the entire thing into the email, have a shorter email that invites them to participate in reading this blog and then give them a spot to click to see the blog. Because plenty of people have emails open up, especially depending on which server they're using. They may have a setting on Outlook or Gmail where it gives them a preview, so it's showing as opened, whether they read it or not, and it just means it's because they clicked on it for half a second to hit delete, and it shows as opened. If you have something you're asking them to click on, even if you're not asking them to purchase something, if it's click here to read more, if it's click here to read my blog, if it's click here to watch this short video, because by the way, I love video because we talk about calling people so they can hear your voice. Video allows you the opportunity to share things and let somebody hear your passion as you're talking about their situation. And so you could record a video about what you do as a coach. Again, keep it short, minute, minute and a half, 2 minute stops that you're putting in to these emails that you're sending out to people. But having that in there, and you can again say, hey, check out this short video on what coaching is here. And then you can also get the stats to see how many people are actually not only opening your email, but clicking on anything that you put inside of it. Also, one of the things that this can tell you is if you're seeing a lot of people open it, but no one's clicking through, one of two things is happening. One, they think it's spam, and so you need to rework your languaging. Or two, your languaging isn't enticing them to open it, so you're going to want to rework your languaging. And so if people are opening your emails but not clicking on those things, take a look at what am I writing? Am I writing too much? Am I writing too little? Am I writing such that this sounds like spam? Am I sending too big? If I'm trying to send something, why is it not going through? And what does it look like? And so all of these things can be really, really handy and helpful as you're building through and figuring out how do I best keep these people in my contact so that I can continue to raise those conversion rates. So awesome. Carl, anything else to add to that?
No, I've had a lot of issues with leads not responding to my messages.
Mm-hmm.
I bet I'm less than 10% response rate, which that's terrible. And I'm still not sure what to do about it.
Yeah. So the first thing is to keep giving them opportunities to respond. That's kind of one of the things we had talked about today was just keep after it, keep after it. Because by the way, that 10 to 12 contact points is an average. And so think about this, when you've had that person that gets to you and agrees to a consultation on the first phone call or two, that means they're at 2. So for the average to be 10 to 12, the next person may take 20. That feels a little rough, right? We'll be honest with each other here. You mean I have to talk to somebody 20 different times or call somebody 20 times before they pick up the phone? Quite possibly. And so again, like I'm not afraid to say this is going to be some difficult things, but what happens on the backside of that? And keeping in mind, when somebody reaches out for a coach, they're nervous. Oftentimes they're scared. Frequently, they're thinking through a bazillion reasons why they don't want to do this. A lot of people hit send and immediately wish they could take it back. In fact, I've actually set up on my own personal email here at work, I've set up a function where my emails, when I click send, don't actually send for 20 seconds. It's one of the greatest things in the world. If I mistype something, or if I type something out and immediately think that was a mistake, I should not have said that way, I've got 20 seconds to pull it back. I wish such a feature existed on my actual mouth. That would make life so much better. I would have avoided so much conflict in my life, so many pointless fights, if I could just have 20 seconds to take back those words once they've left. But unfortunately, that's not the reality of the way that human beings work. But having those conversations over and over and over, because people they're thinking that. They're thinking, oh my gosh, what did I just do here? What did I really just offer out there? Who did I really just send this email to? I'm terrified. And so a lot of times it takes them seeing us follow through and reach out and reach out and reach out and offer help over and over and over and over. And at one point they finally look into like, this person's serious. They haven't flaked out on me. I haven't even called them back yet for the last 6 months or a year. And they've continued to push and push and push, not in an overly kind of abusive way or a salesy way, but this person really is there and they're going to continue to follow through. If this is what their follow through as a coach looks like when I haven't even said yes yet, what's their follow through going to look like when I do say yes? By the way, somebody who's watched you pursue them for 6 months isn't going to balk at a $250 or $300 per session price. They know what they're buying into in this moment because they've seen your persistence, they've seen your follow through, they know that you're going to stick with them and actually push them on some stuff. This is part of the reason that sometimes our prospects will hold off a little bit, is they want to make sure that you're going to follow through. They want to see what you do with them to see, is this person really going to be as serious and as stable as I hope for me? Because that's what I need in a coach. Great stuff, Carl. Tim?
Thank you.
Yeah, real quick. So I'd like to start a monthly email send out to leads, but just what do you recommend? Do I not do that until I first get them to opt in, or do you just start sending them? And then another question is, how about leads, even if I've never made contact at all, and then I just start sending them a monthly, are they going to be like, oh boy, I got on an email list and I've never even talked to this person?
Usually the way to avoid any kind of an issue is to make sure you have an unsubscribe button. I believe there may be a law about that. Ask Seth Connell. He knows more about the law than I do. Let's be honest. He knows more about the law than all of us. He's a lawyer. But I think is usually as long as you have a way for them to unsubscribe, it's not a major issue. They gave you their email address willingly, with a very rare exception. I mean, if you have a pastor who is sitting down with a couple in a church and he writes down their email address and gives it to you without their knowledge, I mean, it could happen, but the vast majority of leads that you're going to receive have given you their email address willingly. Certainly all those that give you an email address through an RPC lead, every single one of them has just given you their email address willingly. And so I'm going to include them on my list until they tell me to stop. And so I don't think there's anything wrong with adding somebody to that, as long as you give them the opportunity to stop and unsubscribe. Taking away an ability to unsubscribe may actually land you in some legal trouble. But if they reply unsubscribe, or if you have a button that says unsubscribe, or if you have a to unsubscribe, simply reply to this email and you'll be taken off the list. As long as you give them an option to quit, you're good to go. And again, most people, believe it or not, that I've seen won't actually quit those lists. You'll have some that drop off. You'll have some that freak out or they get nervous, or for whatever reason, their kid put them in to this. The number of people that I had as leads through the years who I call them and they're like, who are you? And by the time we sift through it over 5 or 10 minutes, we realize their situation is terrible. And it was their 22-year-old daughter or son that put them in for a coach, trying to get mom and dad some help, and they didn't know what else to do at that point. super awkward. Those almost never close, for me at least. Like, but those things happen. But those are opportunities still to talk to somebody. And even in a moment like that, yeah, you may have those kids go back, or that the parents go to that kid and say, "What have you done? This coach was blowing up our phone and sending us emails and trying to get us to talk to them." You may have lost that couple, but that kid may say, "Hey, mom and dad wouldn't go, but I may need you to go to this coach." What was their contact information, mom and dad? What was that email address that you told them you didn't want any more emails from? Because I'm going to go talk to them, because I don't want to end up like you two. And again, that's the kind of thing that can happen. So again, great question there, Tim. But yeah, I would get started on those things. By the way, if you haven't, it's not too late to start reaching out to old leads. If you have a lead that you haven't tried to reach out to for a year or two, what's wrong with right now, in this time, in this day, in this season, saying, "Hey, you know what? This is a great time to connect. Let me go ahead and give this a shot." Because again, it tells that coach, it tells that client, I'm still here. I'm still coaching people. At some point in the past, you decided you wanted some help. You may or may not have gotten the help you needed, but I'm going to keep reaching out until I know that you have what you need. So if you don't want to talk to me, cool. Tell me that. But I'm going to keep talking to you until you tell me that. Again, lots of great stuff here. I'm seeing lots of good stuff in the chat box, and seeing some of you saying you're going to start tracking some new things in 2023. You're going to learn your numbers, quantity, details, tracking your data, setting up sequencing. Shirley saying going to make some more calls. Mary saying planning to implement all of this. I love Jim's honesty. I've been lazy about following up on consultations. They don't always show up, but when they do, and I send them my info, they don't respond, and I might bother them once, but that's it. Now that we are paying for leads, this will motivate me to follow up better and not give up as quickly. Absolutely. And Jim, that's the biggest reason we did this, is we want this to be the kind of thing where everybody wins. We want you to win. We want your clients to win. And part of the way you win is by following up with these people significantly until they tell you to pound sand or say yes. And so keep going, keep pushing, keep challenging. By the way, I think it's fair to say, based on how many of you signed up, based on how many of you showed up, based on how many of you participated, this is probably not the last time we're having this conversation. So we'll probably add some new stuff to it, get some additional stuff, probably have some of the same, because y'all, let's be honest, we're going to have some different people show up next time too. And just saying, woohoo, please keep this call. So I think we may have to. But again, thank you all so much. I am going to, like I said, put the recording up. It'll probably be, I mean, maybe today, depending on how fast Zoom processes the recording and how fast I can get it up there. If not, certainly get it up early next week for everybody, so you can go back and rewatch this. But like I said, keep an eye out for things. We're going to keep doing some cool stuff. Look for more and more opportunities to get yourself challenged and to grow, to develop, because we are just at the beginning of some really, really cool stuff here, y'all. As always, if we can be of help, don't hesitate to reach out to our team, rpc@ramseysolutions.com. That's what we're here for. We love y'all. Take care. God bless. We'll talk to y'all soon.